Hi, I'm Lauren Davitt with UNICEF USA, and this is the latest in our series of conversations with experts speaking to us about coronavirus and how it impacts children. Today, we're talking to Dr. Tovah Klein, a child psychologist and director of the Barnard College Center for Toddler Development. Dr. Klein, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And broadly speaking, how are very young children adjusting to the current circumstances, and what kinds of things are they expressing and communicating?
Right. So it's a really important question. You can imagine there's a whole gamut of how children are responding from, depends on their age, it depends on their family circumstance, it depends on their personality, it kind of depends on where they were in their own development prior to this. But, this is a big shakeup. It's a shakeup for parents, it's a shakeup for families, and young children thrive on routine and consistency and regularity. Whether they're living with 10 people or with 2, they like to know what comes next, what am I doing today? And this has shaken everything up. So, I'm hearing from families all over the country, actually all over the world, about, big changes in children's behavior, and it makes sense. So a lot of going backwards in the parent's view, which I see as stress reactions. So children who are clingier, who are waking up at night, who had been sleeping through the night, children who are, having toileting accidents, more aggressive, just kind of whinier and more, less able to handle small things or what feels like a small thing to the parents. So there's a lot of that. On the other hand, some parents report that because even though they're stressed being home and maybe working from home or maybe having been laid off, that there is a little bit of a calm for many families, that life is a little bit more simple and children are liking having more time with daddy or mommy or both of them. So, it can vary tremendously, but for the most part, I'm hearing a lot about challenging behaviors, a lot.
Well, it makes sense. We've seen so many startling and upsetting headlines all over the news, and obviously children and young children will be exposed to some of that. So how can parents talk to their children about this time of uncertainty?
Yeah. So, excellent question. For your youngest children, and that goes through, your toddlers, your preschoolers, but all the way through your elementary age children, it really is an important role for parents to be filtering the information that children are getting, how they're getting it. We tend to want a lot of information, or a lot of people do, and it's not good for children. It's very scary. They don't know what it means. I mean, let's face it, we don't really know what it means. But they're hearing big words: coronavirus, quarantine, isolation. These are big words to children, and they're scary. They're hearing about people being sick. They're hearing about people dying. And so the first thing I would say is parents really need to keep that information as far from children as possible, right? It's not good to walk into a room and say to a partner or another adult or spouse, like, did you hear today's latest or whatever? That's very scary to children. So really keeping the tone of the house, not in sort of this aroused state. But then taking the information that children do have, I mean, they're certainly hearing coronavirus, quarantine, they know that they have to stay in. To filter that and give children explanations that are at the child's age level is really important. So to explain what coronavirus is, but in very child-friendly terms. The most simple explanation is that coronavirus is a very big, funny word for what we normally call a cold. And, to say to a child, sometimes you get sick, and we usually call it a cold or the flu, but now there's a big word for it. And that starts to demystify it a little bit. Oh, okay. And how mommy or daddy took care of you when you were sick? The same thing's going to happen if you got sick now. Children aren't really getting sick, but if you did, we'd take care of you. So a lot of reassurance is needed. And then, if you have slightly older children, they might be interested in learning more about, what's a virus? And how does it work? So doing it at their age level to keep them feeling like they're going to be okay. Because for the most part, children are going to be okay. Some children are living in very stressful life circumstances. And even in those cases, parents really need to help them say, we're doing everything we can to keep you as safe as we can and to come home to you. If you can't come home every day because of a job, then explain when you will be home. So all of that kind of reassuring presence is what helps children feel stable.
I think those are great points. And, on the point of, children handling stress, one of the things that UNICEF does around the world are these child-friendly spaces that are just
Right.
spaces to help children sort of process stress through play. So I know that you've studied the importance of play as well. So how can parents, use play during this time to keep their kids active and engaged?
I'm so glad you asked that. Children naturally play. It's like it's their sustenance, right? They need water, they need love, they need places to play. And they don't need complicated things to play with. But again, it depends on the child, but children will use play to work out their fears, their worries, to empower themselves. So they might even start playing games around coronavirus, sick, maybe the stuffed animals are sick or the parent is sick and they're taking care of them. Sometimes they can be a little bit vicious in that play, like, I'm going to give you the shot. But that idea of being empowered to do something about this can come through play. Working out emotions certainly comes through play. Imagining scenarios, imagining good scenarios where people get better comes through play. And just the joy of playing is so important for children. So to remember that every day, that's what they need to be doing. Whether playing with boxes or Tupperware or building blocks, the materials are actually not the most important thing. It's really that they have a space to do it. It can be a small space if you can't go outside. It could be a yard if you have the luxury of a yard. But they need a place that they can both move their bodies and, be out in the world, but also figure things out for themselves. Figuring things out are very, very empowering for children. And, interestingly, they don't need a lot of adult intervention in play. They can really, I think this is an opportunity for parents, if they can, to step back. I mean, parents have plenty to do right now. To step back, be there, supervise at whatever level a child needs, depending on their age and how many kids are around in your family. But for parents to step back and give children really room to play.
That makes a lot of sense. And I hope that your answer is a relief to a lot of the parents watching who may be putting pressure on themselves. So the one other group I want to ask you about are children who may be separated from their parents, because their parents are frontline health workers and they need to be isolated for whatever reason. I think, they're having and experiencing, extra stress, undue stress,
Right.
potentially during this time.
Right. Yeah, so there's a lot of separation going on. And as UNICEF knows better probably than anyone, that's a real risk factor for children, particularly for young children. And here's where I think technology comes in so importantly, which is whatever adult is with the child, if it's another parent, if it's a relative, is to give the child the narrative about where the parent is and why. Because otherwise children really absorb, what's wrong with me that I'm not seeing this parent? And they worry. So to say something about, mommy or daddy is, in the hospital right now taking care of people, or is, works in a grocery store. And we want to be sure that mommy stays healthy and that all of us stay healthy. And so this is where she is right now. But then to come up with ways to connect every day. Because the main thing for children is they need to know where the parent is, that the parent's going to be okay. Even if the adults are uncertain and we're worried about that adult, to not put that over on the children. Say, she's doing everything she can. Talk about the gear that they're wearing in a hospital, or certainly in New York City now, the clerks in my neighborhood are all wearing, full face shields, or most of them, and everybody's wearing a mask and there's shields up at the stores. So to talk about how that's to keep people safe, including daddy or mommy. And then to do some kind of connection every day. And that could be like breakfast time, depending on someone's schedule. Maybe you have breakfast together. Maybe you read a book together that the child loves doing with that parent. But something that connects the child that's not just talking. Because we forget as adults, our way of connecting is verbal. But for a child to sit, in front of a computer with a parent, some of it they might want to share what they're doing at home. but that's not their main mode of connecting with the parent. You know, it's touch and snuggling and things like that. So to think about when you can't have that piece, what kind of shared experiences can you have? You know, meals together, maybe the child makes something for the parent and holds it up and shows them. So, you know, coming up with some sort of semi-structure so that there's some sharing between the parent and child. You know, it could be bedtime, saying goodnight, having a new goodnight ritual, and then reassuring the child, this is not going to be forever. And even if you don't know when that parent is going to be reunited, to really say, you know, but we are going to see daddy again. We're just not sure when. You might make a calendar and cross off days just to say, oh, it's been 3 days now. It's been 10 days now, to give them some sense of that timeline.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I love the idea of shared experiences. I think that's important for everybody right now during this time. So my last question is a more personal one, but how are you spending your time during this pandemic? What's the most helpful thing that you've done as a parent during this time? What's helping you?
Yeah. You know, it's clearly been phases, like everybody who's listening is going through. You know, first there's like that shock of like, what do you mean you're closing my workplace? And what do you mean my children are going to be home from school? You know, having some regularity to a schedule. And I've put in a morning walk, no matter how cold or rainy or anything else, I get outside in the morning. And then an exercise routine. So, and I recommend this for everybody, you know, every adult listening, you need a routine of the day, and children need a routine of the day. So it's really that routine that has helped me tremendously. In the days that I let go of it, I can feel a whole difference in my ability to focus and just get through the day. So it's definitely an up and down process.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Klein, for your time. We hugely appreciate you sharing your time and your expertise with us. And for all of our viewers watching, keep following along with UNICEF USA's social channels for the next installment of experts sharing about coronavirus. Thank you.